curious your thoughts on this, because when I started really getting into the topic of apologetics, I always thought to myself, there's no way I could ever master the full massive library of subjects. It can be daunting. It can be scary for Christians, especially new Christians, born again believers, especially those who are just getting into the idea of apologetics. It can feel daunting. Just give like a word of encouragement for those believers who are getting into this topic. Why study apologetics? Why do we need apologists, professional apologists, or even why should the average Christian have a basic apologetic worldview that will help them to properly defend the faith?
There's a lot of levels to that question.
I'm sorry.
No, it's good. So first, I guess to obey the command that we always are supposed to be ready to defend the faith, to give the hope, to provide a defense for the hope that is within us, as 1 Peter 3:15 says. That's a command. And so do we love the Lord enough to obey that command? What does it take for us to always be ready? Okay, so that means we need to be looking into stuff. Now listen, you're finite, I'm finite. We can never master all of human knowledge, let alone all of the knowledge of the universe. So there's always going to be gaps in our knowledge, and that's okay. So on one hand, just do what you can to obey the command. Study this stuff. Second, when you do study this, it does encourage and build your faith, right? So it doesn't only help you obey a command of the Lord, but at the same time, you're like, wow, my faith is very reasonable. And that does help you evangelize. You go out with more confidence because if somebody throws an objection at you, you feel like you know the answer to that objection. So it encourages you. And then at the same time, sometimes we have our wobbly-kneed, weaker brothers and sisters in Christ. And they need that apologetics. There was a guy at our church a few years ago who one neighbor was a Jehovah's Witness, another neighbor was an atheist, and then there was a Mormon, and I forgot who else, all around him, and he was constantly in a crossfire of all these false beliefs, and he was a new believer. That guy was at a very dangerous time when they were all going for his head when he could barely defend himself. Fortunately, he was at a church where we practice presuppositional apologetics, and he was able to be equipped to where he was able to deal with them. And so sometimes it's a means that we use to strengthen other sheep. And it's not just for pastors. It's for the whole flock, because we're all supposed to be evangelizing. So that's an important part of it. And then the final level to answer this, because there's going to be unbelievers that know more about certain things than I know or you know. So when you get to the second half of my book, and I'm actually using this methodology on specific unbelieving worldviews, atheism, macroevolution, dualism, and things like that. I use martial arts as the analogy. Okay, so in the first half of the book, I use building a shed because we're building a worldview. The second half, when we're using it, it's spiritual war, man. We're in combat. So what better analogy than martial arts? And so to break away from my analogy in my book, because in my book, since I love Bruce Lee, I use Jeet Kune Do as the paradigm, but I'm going to use Krav Maga right now as an example. That's an Israeli military self-defense, and it's designed to take a woman who is 5'4" and 100 pounds and make it to where she could defend herself against a 6'5", 250 pounder, right? Now, that bigger man has every advantage in the world, but the whole design of this system is, even though the lady has less knowledge, less things in her favor, is there a strategy that she could win and walk away alive? And that's the idea behind presuppositionalism. You don't have to know more than your opponent. You simply have to be able to prove how on their presuppositions they can't justify the knowledge that they have, right? They can't justify the positions they have. They can't justify the existence of knowledge. They can't justify the uniformity of nature. They can't justify logic. They can't justify moral absolutes. They're woefully arbitrary and inconsistent. And so you don't have to know as much as they do. When you got the tools that are in this book and other presuppositional books, you would have everything you need to take down an opponent who knows more facts than you do, because you could render all their facts void. And that's the point with this.